Hey friends, Amy with Passings. This is video 3 in our Cultivating Solidarity series. And this one is on how we cultivate solidarity. I'm going to start by returning to this story of my friend who really worked hard to take action to go visit her partner, her work partner, in prison after he had murdered his neighbor and caused unbelievable disruption in his life and in hers. So I know what she did because she would come and talk to me and we would walk through it a lot. She did 2 different things, and they're both related to cultivating. So again, we're back to this common ground. I love using this as my metaphor. When I come from common ground, it's ground that I have to cultivate. And she did it in 2 ways, and we're going to talk about both of these. She did composting work, and she did soil nurturing work within our metaphor. So what she did with the composting is she turned inward and she allowed herself to feel exactly what she was feeling. She felt rage, and she would rage in her car. She would rage in her mind at him. She would rage at the situation. She thought of all the things that transpired to lead him to this point. She would rage about all of them. She raged at God. She didn't hold back any of that in privacy and with me, perhaps with others too. She let all of that rage come forward. She let all of her sorrow come forward. This affected her greatly. She lost her partner, her work partner. They had developed this really incredible, impactful way of interacting with patients together, and that would never, ever be able to be returned. She had such tremendous grief on behalf of the victim's family. She stayed up nights imagining what they were going through. This person is very empathic and capable of such deep feeling. She let herself feel all of it, all of that sorrow, all of the rage. She let herself question things. She let herself be confused. She let herself really dig into her own soil and churn it up, find out what was there. She also did something that's really important in cultivating solidarity, which is another level of digging in the soil, and that is she tried to find any places in her where there was a connection with his action. Now, this person would never, I am convinced, I know her well, she would never murder anyone. But she really dug deep. She asked herself, where in my experience have I had violent thoughts about somebody? Where have I wanted to speak violent words? Again, I don't think she's ever said one aloud. It's just not her temperament. But I don't know. Where have I wanted to say violent words? Where have I ever held violence in my being? And she got to know that part of herself. She got to know really all the parts of her that were reflected in everyone in the story. She felt, the neighbor, she actually tried to see things from his perspective, even though she didn't know him. So one of the levels of her composting was to really go into her own psyche, her own experience, her own spirit, and see what's here. This is such hard work. Most of us will not go running toward it, but it is really good, generative work. And it's necessary for cultivating solidarity. So we need to do that composting piece. We need to dig in and see what's standing in the way of me experiencing solidarity for this person, with this person. It could be, I have a lot of judgment. She certainly had judgment of his actions. It could be fear. I might not easily cultivate solidarity with someone, for instance, who decides not to wear a mask and who comes close to me. That's a tough one for me. I don't spend a lot of time outdoors right now during COVID, but I I feel nervous when someone comes very close to me without a mask. I feel afraid, and sometimes I go into judgment. So sometimes my composting requires me, what's my common ground with this person? And I might want to stay in. I have no common ground because they're choosing to do this thing that's putting me and others at risk. For me, it's really important, even if I want to disagree with that person, even if my action in solidarity is to question why they're not wearing a mask and to really listen, I still have to look at what's my response. And for me, it's a response of fear. So go into that fear and just know that it's there. Allow myself to express it. So we do all of this composting work. That's one part of cultivating solidarity. And the other part is we nurture our ground. We nurture our soil. The way that my friend did this is through a lot of prayer. She's has a very, very strong lifelong faith practice and prays constantly. And so she went back to prayer again and again and again. That might not be for you. Maybe it's a meditative practice. Maybe you nurture your soil by spending time doing whatever grounds you, whatever brings you back to this space and this time and fortifies you. Resting is so important when we're cultivating solidarity because this is hard work. So we do two pieces in cultivating solidarity. We cultivate by doing all of this composting, and then we nurture. We nurture our soil. We take care of us. From that, the next step is what I call radical listening. Radical listening is not just active listening. It begins with active listening. But radical listening is learning to listen from a place where we are heart to heart, and I see me and you, but I'm not trying to overtake the story. I'm not over imagining myself in the story. I'm not under imagining and pulling back. Radical listening is me showing up and being here with whatever is true for you in this moment. That's really hard. And you can imagine my friend, when she went to visit her friend in prison, she didn't know. Was he... The last she had heard of him, the last action she had heard, was he turned himself in after fleeing, after murdering his neighbor. She did not know who she was going to meet in that visit, but she showed up and radically listened to who he was. Through that continual radical listening, we can develop ever more capacities for empathy, and empathy is a prerequisite for cultivating solidarity. It's something we can get better and better and better at, all of us. So when she showed up to see her friend, he burst into tears immediately. He looked awful. She said he had lost a lot of weight. He looked sickly. But he burst into tears and smiled, and he said, I never thought you would come. And she said, well, of course I would come. And he said, but why? I'm sure so many people did not visit him. He said, why? And she said, because I care. That's such a simple phrase, but I want us to unpack it a little bit. Because I care. That's really what we're doing when we're cultivating solidarity and acting from that place. You notice she didn't say, because I want to take care of you, because I care for you, because I care about you, because I care, right? When we take care of someone, I like to think of that as when we take care of a situation, right? Often what we're doing, when I say, I'll take care of it, I'll just take care of that. I mean, I'll make it go away. I'll fix it. When we're dealing with people's lives, that not only is impossible to make their situation go away or fix it, it's actually aggressive to think that I can come into someone's situation and make it go away and fix it. Does it have any ring of solidarity? I am not coming from a common ground there. So when we take care of, when we care for, we're probably not coming from a place of solidarity. But when we care, just care. See, that's what my work is to do, is to just care. It's not intellectual. It's very embodied movement of energy to care. One more etymology lesson for you. The root of the word care, from many different languages, so that means it's coming from several different sides. Old English and Indo-European and this Old Germanic. All these different lines, the root means lament and sorrow. So surprising, right? I mean, I don't think that many of us know that. But to me, it makes perfect sense with what we're talking about, that to really care from a place of solidarity, we do have to lament. We do have to experience our own sorrow. From that place, so many beautiful things can happen. Not only in the life of the person whom we're supporting, so not only in the person who was in prison, but as I said, my friend looked radiant. And she was not radiant because she did something good and she could, get her star for her good deed that day. Wasn't that at all. We all know what that looks like and feels like. She came from that place. She had radiance because she was coming from a place of care. She was coming from a place of standing on common ground with this person whose action could have taken him off into such another ground from hers, but she chose to say, no, what ground do I stand on that's common with him? And how can I use this ground to cultivate solidarity? I have no idea how any of the healthcare practitioners from whom I've felt a sense of solidarity, or with whom I've felt a sense of solidarity, I don't know how they cultivated that. It's likely they have not even contemplated these words together. Who knows? I don't know how different people in my life who show up in solidarity have done that. I do know that it's very likely that they have done some composting, some looking at what's inside of them and feeling sorrow and lamenting, amongst a whole host of other things. And they've done some form of nurturing their soil, some form of creating really strong foundations. During this time of COVID, during this time when our world is in so much upheaval, we will all benefit from cultivating solidarity. I'd like you right now to take a minute and think of someone. It can be someone you know in your life. It can be someone you've read about in the paper. I want you to think of someone with whom you'd like to cultivate solidarity. You get to choose. It could be an easy jump, somebody already in your life who you have a lot of similarities to. Could be somebody really, really challenging, somebody who votes differently or really believes something differently about COVID or about racism, about any of the situations we're all really focused on right now. So choose someone. Choose someone. And once you've got that person or that situation in mind, I want you to give yourself permission in the coming days or weeks to cultivate solidarity. I want you to give yourself permission to do that composting to really turn inward and break up whatever in you needs to be broken up so that you can find and create and nurture some common ground with that person or that situation. And then I want you to really listen to themselves, to them, to yourself, to God, if that's in your practice. Listen for what the action is. I'm pretty certain something will show up. If you're already doing this, and I know many of you are, I'd love to hear about it. Email me. If you do it in the future, let me know. Thanks to each of you for this challenging and life-giving work of cultivating solidarity. It is my prayer. It is my fantasy, maybe, that someday we will all have worked so hard to cultivate solidarity that we'll realize that it's all common ground, that we all stand together, solid, firm, and undivided. Thank you.